incentives, and coffee at the center of it all. Please welcome your hosts, Lucas and Naomi.
Welcome to the debate. Today we are stripping away the polite veneer of civilization to look at the machinery underneath. We're analyzing the arguments found in The Architecture of Order and Rebellion, a text that presents a brutal conflict between the safety of the cage and, well, the danger of the wild.
It's a conflict that really defines every organization, every society, and frankly, every human life. So the central question we're wrestling with today isn't just about, following the law, it's this. Is rule breaking a necessary evolutionary pressure that keeps systems from dying? Or is it simply selfish, irresponsible behavior just disguised as innovation?
I'll be representing the position of order. My argument is quite simple. Rules are the foundation of trust. Without them, we don't have freedom. We have anarchy. I contend that ignoring rules is rarely an act of bravery. It is almost always an act of narcissism and risk shifting.
And I will be representing the position of rebellion. My argument is that rules are merely temporary scaffolding. They're snapshots of old assumptions that have hardened into dogma. And blind compliance? Well, that just leads to stagnation. If we don't have people willing to break the concrete, nothing new can ever grow.
Okay, let's get straight into the position statements. And I want to be very clear about where I stand. We live in a world that romanticizes the rebel. We love the movie character who throws out the rule book. But in reality, if your pilot throws out the rule book, you are terrified. My position is that rules exist because systems naturally tend toward collapse. Order is superior to chaos, even when order is boring. Rules create predictability, and predictability is the very mechanism that enables trust between strangers. The only reason I can drive 60 miles per hour past you in a 2-ton metal box is because I trust you to follow the painted lines. If you decide those lines are just suggestions, the whole system fails.
I understand the appeal of the safety blanket.
It's not a blanket, it's the bedrock. Systems can only scale when participants agree to constraints. If everyone improvises the electrical code, neighborhoods burn down. My position is that the vast majority of people who are testing rules, they're not visionaries. They're simply selfish individuals shifting the risk of their behavior onto everyone else. They want the benefits of the system without paying the cost of compliance.
See, I come at it from a completely different angle. I believe that what you call bedrock is, well, it's actually a prison. My position is that rules are historical artifacts. They are solutions to problems we might not even have anymore. Best practices are often just, what we did last time to not get fired. If everyone followed the rules perfectly, we would still be living in a feudal society, because feudalism had excellent rules for maintaining order. Every meaningful improvement in history, science, civil rights, technology, it all came from someone looking at a rule and saying, this is nonsense.
That is a lovely narrative, I'll give you that. But it completely ignores the survivorship bias.
It acknowledges reality. Rule followers are merely maintaining the status quo. Rule breakers are the only ones evolving it. Innovation requires friction. It requires the arrogance to say, I know better than the manual. Progress depends on edge cases, not compliance. If we treat rules as sacred, we're effectively saying that we've reached the end of history and there's nothing left to improve.
Okay, I want to challenge that immediately. Our first core topic, innovation versus narcissism. You are painting this picture of the noble rebel, the innovator breaking the chains of the past. But let's look at what the source material actually says about the, quote, visionary delusion.
Go on.
You're arguing that without rule breaking, we don't get the iPhone. Fine. But for every one visionary who breaks a rule and invents the future, there are 10,000 people who break rules and just create a disaster. You're asking us to tolerate a mountain of incompetence just to find one diamond. My argument is that testing boundaries is usually just a sophisticated excuse for laziness.
Laziness?
Yes. It takes discipline to follow a protocol. It takes discipline to document your code, to follow the safety checklist, to file the paperwork. It is much easier to say, I'm a disruptor, and just do whatever you want. I mean, when a financial firm bypasses regulations to leverage risk, they call it innovation, right up until the market collapses. Then we call it fraud. You are conflating the hard work of actual innovation with the lazy impulse to cut corners.
And you are conflating safety with control. Of course, fraud is bad. We aren't debating criminal intent here. We are debating the stagnation of systems. The source material makes a crucial point about auditing the system. Testing rules is the only way to expose which ones are garbage. If a rule is never broken, we never learn if it's still necessary.
Okay, give me an example.
Look at shadow IT in corporate environments. You have IT departments with these rigid rules. You cannot use this software. You cannot share files this way. So employees find workarounds. They use personal emails. They use unauthorized apps. You call that laziness? I call that a signal. The employees are screaming that the approved tools are broken. If the path on the university quad takes 10 minutes, but walking across the grass takes 2, and everyone walks on the grass isn't the problem. The path is in the wrong place. The rule breaker is the auditor.
But who gave you the right to be the auditor? That is the narcissism I'm talking about. You decide unilaterally that your desire to save 8 minutes is more important than the landscaping budget or the collective decision to have a nice lawn. You are appointing yourself the judge of a system you clearly don't respect.
Someone has to. I mean, if we wait for the committee to decide the rule is obsolete, we will wait until the heat death of the universe. Bureaucracies defend their own existence. They never shrink voluntarily. The narcissist, as you call them, or the agent of change, as I call them, is the only force capable of moving the needle.
And this leads directly into our second topic, and this is where I think your argument really falls apart morally: the morality of risk and trust. You talk about moving the needle, but let's be precise about the cost. Breaking a rule is rarely a victimless act. It shifts risk onto others.
How so?
Take the traffic laws mentioned in the material, or safety standards on a construction site. If you decide the speed limit is just an old assumption and you drive 100 miles per hour, you aren't just betting your own life. You are betting the lives of everyone in the other lane. You are privatizing the thrill of speed and socializing the risk of death. That isn't innovation, that is theft. You are stealing the safety margin that other people rely on.
Okay, but that's an emotional argument. Let's look at it rationally. Safety is often a guise for control. I'm not advocating for reckless driving, but I am saying that blind obedience can preserve bad systems just as easily as it preserves safety. This is what the material calls compliance theater. We have all seen it. The checklist that gets ticked without anyone reading it, the safety meeting that's just a script. That isn't safety, it's a ritual.
But rituals build trust.
No, effective systems build trust. If a doctor breaks a rule, say using a drug off-label because the bureaucratic approval is pending, and saves a patient, they've shifted risk, yes, but they have also exposed a flaw in the system. Trust in a system is only valid if the system produces results. If your system requires 100% compliance to function, it is a fragile, weak system. A robust system should be able to handle deviation.
That's absurd. No system can handle infinite deviation. If we are playing chess and you decide to move your knight in a straight line because the shapes are an old assumption, we aren't playing chess anymore. The game just collapses.
Or maybe we are inventing a better game.
Or maybe you are just ruining the afternoon for everyone else who showed up to play by the agreed-upon rules. This is the issue. You think you are inventing, but mostly you are just confusing people. The source material highlights workplaces that implode without process. When you have a colleague who refuses to update the project management software because they're too creative for rules, they aren't saving a life, they're forcing me to do their admin work. That's not a rebel, that's a jerk.
I admit there is a fine line, but I refuse to accept that the agreed-upon rules are sacrosanct. And this brings us to the core conflict, the one I think you are uncomfortable with: exceptionalism and hypocrisy. The source material asks a very pointed question. Are rules for the average person preventing the exceptional result?
And I will answer that immediately. The belief that rules are for average people is the core hypocrisy of the rule breaker, is the belief that they are the exception.
But what if they are? Look, let's be honest. Rules are designed for the lowest common denominator. They are designed to prevent the worst idiot from doing the most damage. But by definition, that same rule prevents the genius from doing the most good. If you force a Michelin star chef to cook with the same rigidity as a teenager working the fryer at a fast food joint, you kill the art. You kill the outlier result.
So you are arguing for an aristocratic of competence? I am smart, therefore the law does not apply to me?
No, I am arguing that we want exceptional results, but we insist on average processes. You can't have it both ways. Who gets permission to break the rules? The people who can deliver a result that justifies the breach?
That is elitist and completely unscalable. Society cannot function if everyone operates under the assumption that they are the secret genius. The vast majority of people who think they are the exception are statistically deluded. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, weaponized. I don't need to wear a seatbelt, I'm a good driver. I don't need to run the unit tests, my code is perfect.
But society doesn't advance based on the average. Society advances on the back of the outlier. You are focused on the maintenance of the herd. I'm focused on the pathfinders. Yes, it's elitist to say I can handle this risk and you can't, but it's also often true. Look at the miracle on the Hudson. Captain Sully landed a plane on a river. That was not in the manual. If he had followed the average rule book, returned to the nearest airport, everyone would have died. He broke the protocol because he was exceptional.
You are cherry-picking the survivors. This is the great man fallacy. For every Hudson miracle, there are tragic crashes caused by pilots who thought they knew better than the instruments. This is what NASA calls the normalization of deviance. It's what caused the Challenger explosion. Engineers got used to breaking the rules on O-ring temperatures. Nothing bad happened the first time or the second. They started to believe they were exceptional, that the rules were just old assumptions, and then the shuttle exploded. That is the inevitable endpoint of your philosophy.
That is a dark example, but it actually proves my point about transparency. The Challenger failed not because they were testing boundaries openly, but because they hid the risk. They pretended to follow the rules while breaking them. I am advocating for open rebellion.
Open or closed, the result was a catastrophe.
But this leads to the final conflict: intent versus outcome. You are judging everything by the worst-case scenario.
And you are judging everything by the fantasy scenario. The intellectual dishonesty of the rebellion argument is that you only celebrate rule-breaking in hindsight. If the gamble pays off, we call it innovation. If it fails, we call it negligence. You want the credit without the accountability.
I admit the risk, but I argue that the intent matters. The intent to improve the system justifies the testing.
I strongly disagree. The road to hell and the road to massive lawsuits is paved with good intentions. The source material asks, does intent matter or only outcome? In a functioning society, outcome has to be paramount. If you run a red light to get your pregnant wife to the hospital and you hit a pedestrian, your intent does not assemble that pedestrian back together. The rule exists independent of your intent.
But context changes the morality of the act. If we only judge by outcome, we paralyze everyone. No one will ever try anything new because the risk of failure and subsequent punishment is too high. We have to create space for the noble failure.
A noble failure in a laboratory is fine. A noble failure on the highway or in the operating room is a crime. You are trying to apply the logic of artistic creation to the machinery of survival. You want the world to be a sandbox. I am telling you the world is a machine that eats people who don't follow the instructions.
And you are applying the logic of survival to everything. Not everything is a life or death scenario. Most rules in corporate America or in our social lives are low stakes, yet we defend them with high stakes rhetoric. We act like wearing a hat indoors is the same as running a red light. It's about proportion. I'm fighting for the evolution of the potential. If we punish every breach, we kill the potential for something better.
And I am fighting for the protection of the collective. When you say evolution of potential, you are prioritizing the theoretical future over the actual present. You are willing to break the things people rely on today for a chance at something better tomorrow. That is a gamble you are forcing everyone else to take with you.
If we don't take that gamble, the actual present decays. Entropy is real. Order doesn't just stay order. It rots into bureaucracy and then into irrelevance. The rule breaker is the antibody for entropy.
Or the cancer.
That's the risk, isn't it? It's the same biological mechanism. Growth and cancer look very similar in the early stages.
And that is why we have immune systems. That is why we have rules, to kill the deviation before it kills the host.
And sometimes the immune system attacks the healthy organ and kills the host anyway. That's what happens when compliance becomes a religion.
I think we've reached the fundamental divide here. We are not going to agree on this because we are fundamentally disagreeing on human nature. Are we smart enough to improvise or are we flawed enough to need constraints?
Exactly.
We are running up on time, so let's move to our closing thoughts. I want to summarize my position clearly, and I want to be firm on this. While I acknowledge that blind obedience has its risks, the modern glorification of rule breaking ignores the immense damage done to trust and stability. We live in a complex, interconnected world. My ability to live my life depends entirely on your adherence to a set of agreed-upon constraints. When you break a rule, even with good intent, you fracture the shared reality that binds us. You are not just testing a system, you're eroding the trust that makes civilization possible. Order is not the opposite of freedom, it is the prerequisite for it. Without the walls, the roof falls on your head.
And I'll summarize by saying that while rule-breaking creates mess, it is the only path to progress. Rules are snapshots of a world that no longer exists. If we treat them as permanent, we condemn ourselves to living in the past. We need the friction. We need the people who are arrogant enough or brave enough to say, this doesn't make sense. Yes, it's risky. Yes, it's often annoying, but the alternative is a perfectly ordered, perfectly stagnant world where nothing ever gets better. Rules are temporary tools, not permanent shackles.
It's a tension that cannot be fully resolved. Most rule breaking creates chaos, yet all progress requires rule breaking. It's a paradox we are stuck with.
We leave you to wrestle with that contradiction, and we end with the question posed by our source material, which I think is quite dangerous. Which rule are you personally following that you secretly think shouldn't exist?
And are you brave enough or reckless enough to break it?
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.